In true season finale fashion, Hazbin Hotel's conclusion to its first season left me asking more questions than providing answers to me. Where the story could go from here, what kind of obstacles would Charlie and the hotel crew have to face now that Adam is gone, and the big money question of today's video in particular, what in God's name is going on with Lilith? So let's get into talking about the most action-packed episode of the series so far. Just as episode 6 set up, episode 8 was entirely focused on the war between the Hazbin Hotel Alliance and Heaven's Exorcists, who were able to fight on pretty equal grounds with each other compared to the usual Exorcist domination. This being thanks to Carmilla Carmine opening up about how the angels can be slain by weapons infused with angelic power. As an arms dealer and acting as the one to test Vaggi's resolve to fight not for revenge but for love, she was willing to comply by the end of episode 7. Though I am a little sad we didn't get to see her fight directly against the Exorcists in the finale as well. I understand the main crew needs to have the most shine here, and there's already quite a bit of characters, but it's one of those things where it would have made sense for Carmilla to be there since she's the reason these guys can even hold their own in the first place. It would have gave us more time to get invested into her character too. Either way, these action scenes with the fighting the Exorcist quickly became some of my favorite eye candy in the entire show. Don't get me wrong, I like the musical numbers, but I'm glad there wasn't like some action infused with musicals this time, just raw action. It felt like all the main cast was able to have some kind of time in the spotlight at one point or another. Of course, the fights involving Adam, Lute, Vaggie, Charlie, Lucifer, and Alistair were my favorites. Adam may be a total scumbag, but man, this guy can hold his own in a fight. I figured he was already pretty strong due to being the oldest human angel and leader of an armada meant for killing demons, but it was at a point where just he and Lute were basically duoing the entire Hazbin Alliance. Even Alistair was having trouble against Adam. Adam's attacking potency was so high that Alistair couldn't even believe it. To think he of all people would have trouble estimating the true strength of an opponent he has to fight, I can't blame Alistair for hightailing it out of there to recover, because if he didn't, there's no doubt in my mind Adam would have finished him off. Might end up doing a video at some point trying to scale Adam, because this guy feels pretty broken compared to a lot of the other characters in this version of Hell so far. If that's something you guys would be interested in, definitely let me know. With Alistair now out of the picture and nobody left to hold Adam back, Adam just started causing havoc everywhere, leaving the Hazbin Alliance at a bit of a disadvantage for the time being, but in a shocking turn of events, Sir Pentious decides to make the ultimate sacrifice, charging in head-on against Adam with the hope of using his blimp's death ray to take him out in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, Adam makes very quick work of him. Almost too quick. I'm not sure how I feel about the handling of this scene, by the way, because while it is great that Sir Pentious really did redeem himself to fight for the ones he loved rather than for selfish power like he was at the very start of the series, they killed him off in a super unserious way, which on one hand, yeah, he was always kind of the joke villain type character who's best used for comedic relief, but when you have this joke type end for him followed by Charlie having a bit of an emotional breakdown about it right after, resulting in her going full demon charging towards Adam, it feels like the scenes contrast too hard to be happening right after one another, if that makes sense. Personally, I think it would have been better if they just had Pentious attempt to put up some kind of fight against Adam with, you know, like sad music playing in the background or something before getting finished off in a more epic way, compared to getting one shot by Holy Light in a matter of seconds. Then Charlie's breakdown would have felt more fitting here, in my opinion. Either way, the respect for his act of nobility is still there. It gets to a point where Vaggie is able to take down Lute, but allows her to live showing mercy, under the idea of Vaggie doing it solely because Lute will now have to live with the idea that someone she hates with every fiber of her being beat her, but didn't put her out of her misery, now having to live with the fact that she was spared by one of her greatest enemies. For someone like her, maybe that's a fate even worse than death in her eyes. Charlie is struggling to hold her own against Adam as well, and I can't help but question the idea of Charlie being stronger than Alistair anymore. It felt like he got way more done against Adam than she did, and just when it looks like she's on the brink of death, Lucifer swoops in to save the day, punching Adam so hard that his mask broke. Part of me thought what we'd been seeing was never Adam's true face, mainly with the reveal of Lute looking totally different out of uniform in episode 6, but Adam never took his mask off during Charlie's negotiations in heaven, so I figured that maybe that was his real face too, but no, it was a mask the whole time. Lucifer just makes a total fool out of this guy, which honestly, to be expected, because it's Lucifer for crying out loud. Adam may be one of the more notable angels, but he's taking on the leader of hell over here. Just imagine if Lucifer was fighting as seriously as possible the entire time. He did start to take it a bit more seriously at the end when Charlie was free falling into the depths though, but at the beginning he was messing with him for sure. Eventually completely laying into Adam to the point where Adam probably would have died right then and there if Charlie didn't ask her father to show him some mercy. However, Adam still refused to go down without swinging, still standing on his high horse, believing all the sinners should be bowing down to him more than anything since he's the reason they even exist in the first place. It's clear that even when he knows there's no point in fighting anymore, he still won't change. So it was time for him to go. Never would have guessed it would be nifty to do Adam in, but, sure. This comedic death definitely felt like it was handled better than Pentius's, I'll say that much. Looks like I was half right about the idea of Adam needing to die in the video I did last week about he and Lut's fates by the end of season 1. The reason it was only half right is because Lut obviously stays alive and retreats back to heaven with the rest of the Exorcists, and I assumed that she was gonna die too if Adam died. Considering how similar these two characters are when it comes to how they viewed hell, I just assumed they'd end up meeting the same, if not very similar fates as one another. Lut did lose an arm, but obviously that's not on the same level as full-on dying. With everything finished, we're now left with the assumption that the extermination days will not happen anymore. Despite the hotel and its general surrounding area being completely destroyed, it was still an overall victory for hell in this battle. Plus, these guys can just rebuild the hotel real quick with the power of music and sorcery. Let's go! That's obviously not all, though. Alistair comes back feeling more liberated than ever before. The taste of freedom he felt from the war gave him some semblance of hope that the deal he's locked into might have some loopholes he can work around. And if he can pull it off, he'll finally be free and the one supposedly pulling the strings. Not gonna lie, I'm quite surprised we didn't get the reveal of who his deal was with by the end. Thought for sure that was something we'd know during the final few minutes. So until further notice, we just have to continue to go with the assumption he's either owned by Lilith or Eve. Either or could work for me. This was followed by the revelation of Sir Pentius making it into heaven after Adam killed him, which opens up some interesting yet equally confusing paths, because Pentius going to heaven despite being killed by an angel could mean Adam may end up in hell at some point, even if it wasn't shown in this episode. Maybe it was one of those technicality instances where since Adam was killed with an angelic weapon, he's now fully dead, while Pentius was killed by holy light and not a weapon, so it allowed him to cheat the system in a way. And while I do find it sweet that Pentius was able to be the first breathing proof the Hazbin Hotel does work, it's a bit conflicting for me, because my hope was after the war ended, the hotel's goals would maybe shift a bit to the idea of just wanting to make hell an easier place to live in, rather than, still trying to get the sinners into heaven and just that. The way episode 6 had Charlie react to heaven's corrupt system on top of Emily taking her side made me believe this would be the case even more, so with Pentius now there, it inadvertently continues to push the idea of getting the sinners out of hell. This is something I never really put two and two together before until writing this video, but transferring all of the newly well-behaved sinners into heaven is just going to make hell worse than it already is, since these redeemed sinners won't be able to help spread their good influences down there anymore. At this point, I feel like they need to run with the idea of some sinners wanting to stay down there willingly and saying out loud they want to improve hell by not leaving, or else this direction could become a bit concerning for me. I'm still gonna hold out some hope for it though. Finally, the biggest reveal of all, Lilith being in heaven this whole time. Her 7-year absence was spent sitting by the heavenly beaches getting a nice tan. Lut was the one who confronted her about how Lilith's supposed deal with Adam was now done because he's dead, so with him out of the picture, Lut wants Lilith to go back down to hell and put the Hazbin Hotel out of commission for good. Lilith was already an extremely mysterious character, arguably the most mysterious one in the entire show, and this revelation of her being in heaven, combined with making some kind of deal with Adam of all people, adds even more to this mystery surrounding her. So the big money question of the video here, what was this deal between Adam and Lilith? What does Lilith accomplish from just kicking it back in heaven while her husband and daughter are partaking in the fight of their lives? As for the deal itself, I think it may have something to do with the extermination. Correct me if I'm wrong, and this is something I may have misspoke on in my Adam video, but was it ever specified when the extermination started happening? Has it been happening for longer than Lilith's sudden disappearance or not? Because if not, maybe the deal she made with Adam was what allowed the exterminations to happen. She gets free roam in heaven and in turn pardoned from extermination if she allows it to happen. The reason the exterminations even began in the first place was because of the sinners' uprising, an uprising that Lilith herself incited with all those songs she sang throughout hell. Perhaps Lilith realized this uprising was getting out of control and wanted to flee the scene, having her own safety be the #1 priority over anything, which as a result would make her a bit of a coward to abandon her people like that just to live the cozy life in heaven. Or on the other hand, maybe she had a similar mindset as Lucifer when it came to other sinners, just a much more extreme version that formed over time after realizing hell was just out of their own league compared to heaven. This possibility in particular wouldn't even need to connect to the idea of when the exterminations began either. It would be the more interesting scenario for me too, because instead of just rolling with the idea of Lilith being a coward, it would tackle the angle of someone who was once a noble leader who loved her people to a broken person who lost the will to fight, now being put up with the task of going back to hell to stop her daughter's dreams so she might be able to still stay in heaven for the rest of her days. Yeah, it's kind of similar to what Lucifer went through, but not exactly the same. Part of me thinks Lilith may be ashamed of this deal too, because Adam never revealed to Charlie her mom was in heaven, leading me to think there was a clause in the deal about Adam not being allowed to tell Charlie or Lucifer about her being there. I feel like Lilith being there would have been something Adam would have used as leverage against Charlie, causing her to lose the will to fight for hell if her mom abandoned it. Like, that's something he would do, right? Like, they're in the middle of fighting, it's like, yeah, you want to protect these people? Well, your mom doesn't even want to protect these people. Ha! Like, that'd be something he'd do. Yet he never did. And then we still gotta think about how Alistair might fit into all this. At this point, I'm thinking if he were to fall in line with scenario 2 of Lilith just being scared or whatever, then maybe she just used Alistair as a way of being a guardian angel to Charlie at this point. With this reveal of Lilith being in heaven, it feels like now there's not enough information to go back to or subtle hints to look at to truly figure out why Alistair might be working for Lilith. I'm very curious to see what kind of role she'll have in season 2 because the finale seemed to be setting her up to be some kind of antagonist for next season. Considering how much Charlie looked up to her mom growing up, I doubt Lilith is going to be one of those antagonists that goes out with a death via killing through one of the protags like Adam did. She just needs Charlie to show her the light again. We're in for quite the hiatus, I'm sure, yet I'll eagerly be waiting to see what this next season will have in store for us. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the season 1 finale or just season 1 in general. Did you think it delivered in the ways you hoped it would? I'd love to know your thoughts. Don't be a stranger to hitting that like button down below and subscribing for more content like this in the future. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.